Hey Ding Dongs, I'm Jamie.
I'm Richard.
And this is Explain It to Jamie, the podcast in which I, Jamie, get the political happenings of the world explained to me in terms that I understand by my politically savvy and handsome friend, Richard Lamb.
Yay.
Yay.
Yeah, so we're going to do, before we get into the bulk of today's episode, we're going to do a little bit of a current events update.
Yay.
Coming in off the news ticker.
Breaking.
So last week we did a little bit of a clarification episode where we talked about, we did a double dip episode.
Double dip.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
What a faux pas I just made. How awkward.
That rebrand wasn't as aggressive as we had hoped.
Yeah, that's right. We didn't go into my brain and put a microchip in there.
We will.
Okay, so anyway, we talked a little bit about the leaked version of the Republicans Healthcare Act and the version that was finally proposed because we hadn't updated that yet. And there's hot news coming down the pipeline.
Steaming hot news.
The American Healthcare Act, the Republicans' alternative to Obamacare, has been pulled. It was going to get voted on yesterday, and they pulled it.
Yay!
Yep. Yay!
So that means all the problems are solved. And
That's
everything's
right.
back to normal,
That's
like
right.
it was in 2015.
Yep, and Bernie Sanders is Santa Claus now.
Yeah,
just like we all wanted.
I knew it.
No, yeah, I mean, it was predictable that it was going to be a problem, like I said, and like we got into on. If you haven't listened to the Obamacare episode, you should take a listen to it because Obamacare is going to be around now for at least a little while longer.
Yeah,
and B, the double dip episode that we did last week where we talked a little bit about this. But as I said, there's a huge divide in the Republican world about if poor people should get tax entitlements at all or not. And
right.
It looks like what happened was the people who didn't believe they should get tax entitlements, because the Republican alternative still had tax entitlements in it, a tax credit, right, causing people who didn't make $75,000 to pay less in taxes to get a tax benefit so they could buy insurance. The people who were against that in the Republican Party gathered too much steam, and Paul Ryan knew the whip had told him that there weren't going to be enough votes to pass the bill. Right. So that's why he went to Donald Trump and told him to pull it. Now, it's also worth saying too, like you asked me if it had come from Trump. I don't think it came from Trump himself, but it looks like it came from Steve Bannon, because like the most amazing reports are coming out of Washington right now that did you read any of this?
Well, I read one that was like Steve Bannon said, this isn't a debate, you must vote this through.
Yeah.
And then one Republican said to him, the last time someone told me what to do, I was 18. It was my daddy, and I didn't listen to him either.
That's right.
I don't know that he said it in that voice, but I read
to.
it in that voice.
Yeah, totally.
He did say daddy.
He definitely said daddy in more ways than one, if you know what I mean.
Woo! Yeah! Bam!
It's getting freaky.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, and it's worth mentioning too that the Koch brothers. Have you heard of them?
Oh yeah, I thought they were the Koch brothers. Or
No,
Koch
Koch
brothers.
The Koch brothers.
I'm gonna keep calling them Koch.
The Koch brothers. The Koch brothers, who are like Republican billionaires who are responsible for a lot of the like crazy things.
Did you say were or are?
They are. Sorry, they are Republican billionaires.
They also were.
But they were responsible and are responsible for a lot of the like idiotic, insane things that Republicans believe in now that don't seem to make any sense.
Right.
The Koch brothers like embarked on essentially a multi-year campaign, decades-long campaign to like create think tanks that created crazy ideas like global warming isn't real and all this stuff, and then caused those think tanks to make like intellectual papers which influenced grassroots organizations and all this stuff. So they essentially seeded in.
Are you about to tell me that they're dead?
No, I wish.
Oh.
I really actually wish they would die.
Yeah, I wish they would die too.
They offered any Republican who would vote against the Paul Ryan healthcare bill, I believe it was an 8-figure like campaign chest, like they offered them access to a huge amount of money. That's part of why it imploded.
Isn't that
absurdly illegal? You know what? Like
obviously illegal.
Like essentially, I'm sure it's illegal for them to just give people money, but if you do it through a foundation, through a super PAC, a political action committee, through you spread it through whatever. It was just made clear the Koch brothers would pay people to
you
not.
guys would be all right.
It's the first time in American history that someone has paid anybody to influence the legislature, though. So that's shocking.
Right.
That's sarcasm. It happens all the time.
So. Okay, so they were offering it to people who vote against.
Yeah, to Republicans who were going to vote against it because the Koch brothers didn't think it went far enough in taking entitlements away from people. Right. They want even less regulation. They want they want a better environment for insurance companies. Isn't that fucked up?
Wow.
Anyway, that shit went down in flames. We got Obamacare now for a while, which is, imperfect. So take a listen to our Obamacare episode.
Dinner at their house on Christmas.
I couldn't do it because I don't eat other people.
Yeah.
I assume it's just like a head. It's like that scene in Indiana Jones.
Yeah, they eat poor people.
Yeah.
Don't they?
Yeah, literally.
Yeah,
they're legally allowed to eat poor people without insurance, which is why they're against the Obamacare.
Right.
There's like a loophole that they got written in.
Starve to death?
Yeah. God. We have it so hard.
All right. Are there any more updates you want on the Obamacare?
No, we'll just we'll keep getting into it when it becomes relevant again, and keep your ear balls fixed. And if you haven't listened to our Obamacare episode, like I said, go back, take a listen. If you're not sure exactly what it is, because now we have it for a little while longer. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Jamie.
Yeah.
What do you want to learn about this week?
I want to know about Angela Merkel.
Angela Merkel. She's the German woman with that haircut.
Yeah, she's a famous German chancellor, but not the one that you're thinking about. No, she's much different.
That is her theme song.
Yeah,
that. As you're gonna learn, that was actually an extremely accurate theme song.
Yeah. It's called "We're Germany and We're Okay Now."
Yeah. Honestly, I feel like you're actually sort of nailing it. So we'll get into this, but so Jamie, why do you want to know about Angela Merkel?
Don't we usually do that after the theme song happens?
No, after the theme song happens, we usually do. Tell me what you think Angela Merkel is.
Okay, our next episode, for those of you that are already hooked, is going to be Explain It to Jamie. Explain it to
format
Jamie.
of Explain It to Jamie.
To Jamie.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to know what Angela Merkel is. She's in the news. She's Trump just like brutalized an interview with her.
Yeah.
She's the leader of Germany, which seems to be one of the most stable European countries. Mm-hmm. And it seems to me, from what I've been gathering in the news, that like a lot of strings go through Germany. A lot of things, a lot of things with the European Union begin and start with Germany. And so I want to know who she is, what she's about, what Germany's responsibility in the European Union is, and that kind of thing.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, Germany's a pretty unimportant country, so it's not a lot to get into.
Yeah, I bet. Let's just do something else.
Yeah. You want to go play Frisbee? Here, let's go play Frisbee. Let's get out of here.
Bye, everybody. No, just kidding. Yeah.
Okay.
Inception.
That's it. That's some good sound design right there. That Foley I did. That was actually, I did that sound effect with my mouth. Could you tell?
I'm doing Foley of me eating a cherry blaster in a closet right now.
Okay, well, we've reached our intellectual peak. I think it's time to initialize theme song.
Initialize theme song. Activate now. What a great theme song.
I agree. We totally just listened to it and didn't just stop talking for 3 to 4 seconds and then continue talking. Yeah. Okay, so Jamie, what do you know about Angela Merkel?
Well, okay, let's break this down. Angle.
Mm-hmm.
Pointy. Okay,
yeah.
Follow me.
Okay, yep.
Follow me.
Yeah, go on.
Merkin. Pubic wig. Pointy pubic wig. And thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Can you add some more claps in post?
No, I'm not
Okay.
going to do that.
Deal. Yeah.
Okay, well, that
No,
was
I
a
don't
fun
know.
time for
I
everybody.
like
You know that
she's, she's the lady. Runs what runs Germany.
Yeah.
And her and Trump had a funny get together the other day.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So Angela Merkel is the Chancellor of Germany. That's her official title.
Right.
The Chancellor is
The leader of the choir.
That's right. That's right.
No.
She's the one. She's the one who's like making all the arrangements so that it's like, oh, we're doing "Don't Stop Believing" again. And she's like, guys, that was an E. This is in D sharp, which is E flat. Keep up.
Yeah.
If we're gonna beat the Netherlands this year in the Eurovision All Government Song Contest, we need to be on point.
Yeah. Well, if you got nothing shit up to your neck, nothing left to do but sing, as Samuel Beckett said. Right?
Great.
Right. I am on today. Okay.
Okay, no. Angela Merkel is like the Chancellor of Germany. It's
Angela?
like it's a job. Oh yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, Angela. That's
Yeah.
correct. And it's a job that's like the Prime Minister in Canada. So she's like the most powerful politician, like the leader of Germany, and the Chancellor comes from the Bundesrat, which is like the House of Commons.
Bundesrat sounds like something you yell after you do something really great.
Actually,
Bundesrat!
Every single German word sounds like that. In my experience, you could scream any German word in any kind of context where you would scream anything, and it just works.
All right. Like what?
Like Kraftwerk.
Crowd work.
Yeah.
Wer vom Dunsteffekt?
Yeah. Nice. Yeah.
Bundesrat.
The Bundestag.
Bundestag.
Yeah, the Bundestag is the House of Commons. The Bundesrat is the Senate, like the upper house.
That's confusing.
And in Germany, they have a proportional system too.
It's
Which
like
is
if we named our House of Commons, and then like made another one called House of Schmamens.
it is a bit like that, yeah.
Isn't it?
But I think it means like upper house and lower house, which is what we still call them.
Oh, I see.
Like they both have the word house. And a lot of German words are like that, right? That's like compound words. You can do that in German. I don't know that much about the German language, so I might immediately be shooting myself in the foot here. But you can like create new words by just shoving together existing words in a way that you can't in a lot of other languages. Like you could just like, if I was like,
couch missile.
if I was like, this Mike Wingard is making me sad, I'd be like, shit, I'm Mike Wingard sad as fuck right now. And like everyone would kind of get that. And then Mike Wingard sad would be, this is just an anecdote, but like a guy I know who worked in Germany as a professor for a couple of years relayed a conversation he had with somebody where he had a German friend over or something for like hanging out, and they were hanging out. He was another professor, and he was like, so how you doing? And the guy was like, well, what is this word in English where, my spouse, she is away for a long time working on a contract, and I miss her, and I miss her being in my life, and then she comes back, and I'm happy that she is back, but also I am missing the feeling of missing her, because in a way that there was a romance to it. So what is that word in English for that? And Guillermo was like, I don't think we have that word. He's like, oh, but in German, this is the feeling of missing the spouse feeling. Like and he has like, there's like a word for it, right? So like,
Missing the feeling of missing the
yeah, or something like that.
Man,
yeah, so
weird.
like there's, you could do that with German languages.
Get those guys something to do.
Yeah.
Like, Jesus.
Well, they don't have a great track record. Let's just throw that out there. Let's just tear that.
Let's
Band-Aid
not
off.
give them too much to do.
Let's
Last
be
time
clear.
we gave them a lot to do, they really ran with it.
Guys, World War II happened.
Yeah.
It was really not good. It's going to come up many times in this, and I feel like we just need to start making jokes about it.
Yeah.
So that we just all have to acknowledge that happened. The Nazis, Hitler. It was a bad time for a lot of people. It was brutal. It was crazy. Anyway, okay, we're going to get back to that in a minute.
Anyway, Germans have funny ways of making words.
Yeah, so she's the Chancellor of Germany. She's the head of the government. Well, never mind. She's the most powerful politician. The head of the government is the president of Germany. Right. Germany also has a president, but it's like more
Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, that's right.
No.
It's a more ceremonial function than not ceremonial, but it's like not as important as the chancellor.
Okay.
So she's been the chancellor since 2005.
Yeah.
And yeah, she is, because she's the head politician of Germany, she's also essentially the head of the European Union. Germany is the largest by population and also the most economically powerful of all of the countries in the European Union. And so Angela Merkel, what she does and decides to do with Germany has a huge effect on the European Union. And the European Union can't do a lot of stuff without Germany backing it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Anyway, so that's who she is in a nutshell. Now, she's a super interesting lady if we start to delve into like, okay, so but who is she underneath the skin? I'm also going to just throw this out here.
The human costume.
Okay, let me just get right into this. Any female in the world, but especially any female politician, has to deal with probably an appalling amount of sexism that you and I could only vaguely imagine. Like, I can't imagine it.
I don't have to imagine. I'm very, very sexist.
Yeah. That being said, Angela Merkel, it's like she's... You can't talk about her without talking about her in those terms. You have to sort of talk about her in the terms in the real world that she's playing in. So like, while I wish that I didn't have to discuss things like her appearance, guess what? It's important, and it is kind of a part of what she is and who she is, right? So like, when you think of Angela Merkel, she's kind of like sort of a dowdy looking, sort of serious lady, right? Yeah. And this is a huge part of like how people identify in her identity, and it seems to have always been a huge part of her identity. So Angela Merkel was born in the west of Germany in, I believe, 1954, right after Germany was divided, right? And just before the wall came up. And her dad was a Lutheran minister, and he moved his family to East Germany from West Germany when the hundreds of thousands of people were fleeing from East Germany into West Germany. But he went the other way. He went from west to east to work in a Lutheran institution there. So she was raised in East Germany.
All right.
She's the first woman to ever be the like most powerful politician in the Germany since Germany united into one country in the 19th century in history, and she's the first East German to be the head of the unified Germany post Cold War.
Whoa!
Yeah, so she really is. She really blazed the trail.
Yeah,
but she blazed the trail by all accounts in a very intensely careful and patient way. I would describe her as a crazy good poker player.
Okay,
and a huge part of that came from from a super young age. She talks about how she was like really physically clumsy and like she says she couldn't walk downhill without falling over. Like she had to teach herself how to do. I know, right? It's like, oh, Angela. She can't even.
That's
like,
funny because her name does rhyme with Steve Urkel.
And
he was also clumsy.
That's true.
Yeah,
notoriously. Wait, are they
so. Although he always claimed that he didn't do it.
That he didn't do what?
Did I do that?
Oh yeah, I see what you're doing there.
Yeah.
Oh.
Or that he didn't realize that he did it.
Man, this is such a topical reference.
Remember Family Matters, everybody?
I used to watch the hell out of Family Matters.
That used to be our family show. We used to watch that
you watched it
every week.
Yeah.
Every week.
Anyway, so she's a super like physically awkward person, is to this day apparently, but especially was when she was younger. And she said she had to think actively about anything she did in order to not just like wipe out and hurt herself.
Right.
She also like all through her youth and into her adulthood, like people said like she didn't know two shits about dressing herself and always looked horrible. Right. And had like several of her high school teachers have been given many interviews where they say her hair was really bad.
Wow.
I know, this is like, how bad does your hair have to be for your high school teacher in East Germany to tell you that it's a bad haircut, right? So, I mean, like I said, this is not just a podcast where we make fun of a female politician for looking bad, but what I'm saying is she looked really unassuming.
Okay.
And if you think of like Sarah Palin, Angela Merkel's like the fucking opposite human of Sarah Palin in almost every possible conceivable way, right?
Well,
like,
that's nice.
Yeah. I know. I'm like, that's great that somebody decided to do that. What a good thing to do. Sarah Palin, who plays the sort of like,
folksy,
hot folksy Alaska mom game who like says it like it is. Angela Merkel is the fucking opposite of that. She like does not wear outfits where the colors coordinate, and she almost never reveals what she's actually thinking.
Right.
A lot of people think this is a thing that she cultivated when she was growing up in East Germany,
Right.
and which was a society where you could be punished for thinking the wrong thing.
Right.
And Angela Merkel, East German politicians who grew up in East Germany are often scrutinized pretty heavily for how they lived under communism, right? Because it was full of like people betraying other people. Like, remember we talked about the Stasi
Right.
in the Vladimir Putin episode. They were the secret police, and they had informants. So you could like, if you were a Stasi informant, you could, I was hanging out with you and we were like, man, Justin Trudeau sure sucks, right? And you were like, yeah. Then I would go to the Stasi and be like, Jamie said Justin Trudeau sucks, and they would pick you up and put you in prison or
Right.
kill you, or who knows.
Can Justin Trudeau do that?
No, he couldn't personally do that.
Gosh.
He's too beautiful. He would never do that to us, Jamie.
Yeah.
He loves us too much.
Right.
Him and Sophie, every night.
Who's Sophie?
That's his wife.
Oh.
Every night before they go to bed together, holding each other in an exactly equal way so that neither of them is superior to the other.
Yeah, but in some complicated yoga pose.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Suspended from a bed that hangs from the ceiling. And each of them has like a kangaroo pouch fanny pack that holds their children. They before they go to bed, they say out loud to each other, I hope Jamie and Richard had good days. And then they think, and then they repeat that for every person who lives in Canada.
Oh my God.
Aren't they? Don't you just love them?
Yeah, I do love them.
Yeah.
They're so lovely. If only they would keep their pronouns.
If only they would like let refugees into the country more.
So Angela
Stop lying to
Merkel,
us.
she grew up in East Germany, which
Yeah.
was communist, and
Right.
she had to she was an awkward, unassuming,
Yeah.
frumpy young lady,
Yeah,
very
so she's-
Steve Urkel.
and she's not-
not letting
and
go
she's
of
not
that
like-
metaphor. and she had to learn to hide things.
And she's not sexy, right? She's not a bombshell. So she commands.
on what you're into.
So like any of these levers of like the ways that, make of this what you will. It's like not. I can't imagine what it's like. But when you're a young woman and you start to learn that your appearance can command power, that was like never an option for her, right? So apparently she figured out pretty quick she needed to go to school and get educated if she wanted to get ahead. She had ambitions. So she decided, I'm going to just go along, even though I don't like communist society and it's repressive and I hate that. I'm going to play the game. And she
Right.
made the decision to just kind of like bide her time. Her father is a West German, like a Lutheran church guy, right? The communists didn't like religion and they didn't like West Germans. So her family was super under suspicion. Like her mother was an English teacher, and English teachers were in really high demand in East Germany, but they never let her teach. She would call them every year, the government, and say, I'm a qualified English teacher, man, I want a job. And they literally never let her teach. Like that's because her family was Western, so they were suspicious of them.
Right.
But Angela was allowed to finish high school. There are other East German politicians who are in politics now whose families were critical of the government in East Germany who were not allowed to finish high school. They were taken out of school, right? Angela went to like the communist youth groups. Angela learned how to speak Russian and in fact was East Germany's high school Russian language champion 3 consecutive years in a row.
Whoa.
Yeah, so she's a very good Russian speaker. Which obviously comes into play when she's negotiating with Russia.
For sure.
Apparently, Vladimir Putin said she's the first major world leader he's ever been able to talk to in Russian.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's interesting.
There you go.
And then she became a chemist, like a physicist, who specialized in like the places where physics and chemistry interact. And she worked in a East Berlin research lab through the 80s.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Super cool.
Right? That's cool.
Yeah.
And apparently there too, there was a lot of sexism, and she just like showed up, did her work really hard, and kind of like bided her time because she knew that this is what I mean. She's apparently a great poker player. Apparently she's not a robot. Apparently she can be very funny. She's very sharp and biting also sometimes. She gets really heated. She has people she doesn't like. Things frustrate her, things make her angry, but she almost never ever shows it in public. And people think this is the product of a lifetime of growing up in a society that would severely punish her if she ever lost her cool.
Right.
So she seems to really be good at that, and that's really integrated into her, right? The other thing I said is, right, so she's a scientist. She's a data person. Apparently she reads tons of charts and data sets, and she's always looking for more data. They say you can call her at 1 a.m. and she'll be awake because she only sleeps about 5 hours a night, and she won't be reading a book. She'll be reading like bureaucratic data tables and stuff like that. That's like part of who she is. Yeah.
Cool. So this clumsy, young, awkward, frumpy lady grew into a ass-kicking, like Russian-speaking chemistry, physics, wizard, data analysis chancellor of Germany, much like Steve Urkel's evolution into Stephen Urkel.
Stefan Urkel.
And that's why I didn't let it go. That's why I didn't. That's the payoff. That's the payoff.
Yeah, everyone's really happy for you right now.
Thank you. Nobody's more happy than I am.
Yeah. No, so I don't know exactly what she was working on when she was a chemist. I saw the title of one paper she published, and it literally made no sense to me whatsoever. Okay, here's an interesting thing. Did you know Margaret Thatcher, the Prime Minister of Britain in the 80s?
Not personally, but
Apparently Margaret Thatcher may have invented soft serve ice cream, because before she was a politician, she was like a food scientist, and she was working at the UK company that created soft serve ice cream in the ice cream research division when they created soft serve ice cream. So there's like no one's been able to definitively say she did it, but
we're all pretty sure.
Yeah. So I mean, thanks for the soft serve ice cream, Maggie. Also, no thanks for the stupid neoliberalism that is destroying all of us to this day.
If only we could make this ice cream softer.
Yeah. If only there was a way we couldn't give it to Indians. The Indians can't digest it.
Can they not digest soft serve ice cream?
No, but if Margaret Thatcher could also make the ice cream sort of racist, I imagine that she would have been cool with that.
I see. I thought it was like
if you could
metabolize soft serve ice cream.
If you can invent a racist ice cream, the Koch brothers want to hear from you. Call their number. They paid us for this advertisement.
Yeah. It'll sound like you're speaking to a machine, but if you just say, I invented a soft serve ice cream, within a second, it'll go click. Hello, Mr. Koch here. I'm listening.
It goes straight to the Koch's Blueberries, which it sounds like it might be like a BlackBerry, but actually it's a kind of phone that only they have, that they made for themselves.
Is that true?
No, I just made that up. Fake news, bitch.
Fake news.
You heard it here first.
Wow.
Okay, so
she became
she's a chemist,
this ass-kicking scientist lady.
So 1989 comes and the Berlin Wall falls.
Yeah,
I always there's like all these little anecdotes about her. So this is kind of a funny one too. And the night the wall falls, all these East Germans are going across to the West. Some of them for the first time in their lives, because you're only allowed a visa to go to the West if you're in the East. When you're 60, you have to be over the age of 60 to get a visa, because they don't want people getting contaminated by Western ideas and running, right? And they figure once you're 60, you have it so many ties, you're not gonna to make a run for it,
right?
So and apparently they got West German TV, so Angela Merkel would dream of going to California when she was 60.
Whoa.
Right, like that was the kind of life that they had planned. But when the wall comes down, it's a surprise to everybody. So East Germans are streaming across into West Berlin. Angela Merkel has a weekly sauna date with a friend of hers, which she just goes to and does. She doesn't break the date because the Berlin Wall falls. She does the sauna thing, but then she goes across the wall, and all people are going to shopping malls, right? Because all these consumer goods you can get in the West, you can't get in the East. And Angela she goes to somebody's apartment, she drinks a beer that she doesn't know what it is. It's not a brand she's ever seen, and then she goes back to East Germany. She doesn't do anything too crazy. Right. Oh, it's also worth saying, Angela Merkel's not her maiden name is Angela Kasner. Merkel is the last name of her first husband, who was another scientist, but they divorced. She was 23 when they got married. They divorced after about 5 years, but she just kept his name this whole time, even though she's remarried now to another scientist who she's been with for quite a long time.
She didn't. How long has she been Chancellor of Germany?
It's 12 years.
So she got divorced while she was...
She got divorced in the 80s.
Oh, okay, so this is a while ago.
Yeah.
Well, I always like hearing stuff like that, because I feel like so much is based on image out west here, that there's never any politicians who have like been divorced or
especially
had any
like
sort of like. I don't want to
this
say
is part of
never.
this is part of what's fascinating about her is that anything that you would think a female politician would have to do to succeed, she defies all those stereotypes. She's divorced, remarried, has no children, like scientist lady with no emotions.
Yeah,
right. Actually, she has kind of a comforting poker face, right? She has kind of like a dry, bland pleasantness. Right. The German nickname for her is Mommy. Like the German, it's Mutti. It's like the German word from like mommy. So Germany calls her mommy. They're like,
Germany's got a bad history of paternalizing and maternalizing their leaders.
Yeah, it's a bit odd. Eh?
You know, like
well, because there's like
Mutti.
Okay, this is a bit of a diversion, but the German culture was so weirdly paternalistic and authoritarian through the 19th century and into the 20th century, and it was like, obey your elders, listen to mom and dad, listen to your teachers, which is, I'm sure there's a million dissertations about this, but like part of why they can be told by their leaders to do horrible things. Not that other people couldn't, but Germany was particularly, the culture really did not set them up to think as individuals. I mean, Germany's only had democracy for like 50 years, 60 years, right? Think about that. Right. It's only been a democracy since the 50s, since it was divided in the Cold War, since after World War II, right? And Angela Merkel didn't grow up in a democracy. She had to learn how to be in a democracy when she was like 35, when the wall came down.
Right.
Right. So, but she's a democratically elected. Okay, so here we are. We're at the wall coming down. Right after the wall comes down and the USSR is kind of collapsing, there's going to be democracy in East Germany for the first time. Before East Germany and West Germany became one country again, there was one election that East Germany had by itself. The only time they had their own democratic election. And Angela Merkel, it's not clear why she does this, because she had never showed any interest in politics or displayed any interest in politics in East Germany. Again, she may have just been biding her time. Starts working with this new political party called Democracy Awakening. And by that, I mean, she literally shows up at the door of this new political party and says, is there anything I can help with? She's 35 years old. And they're like, we just got all these computers donated to us from West Germany. We don't know how to set them up. Can you set them up? So she sets up this place's computers. She just chills in the background. She doesn't do anything particularly fancy, right? And she just kind of waits. And then a month into her volunteering for this party, which is called Democracy Awakening, that was the name of this party, there's this huge scandal where the leader of the party is revealed to be a Stasi informer. They realize that this guy's working for the Stasi. Whoa. So it's chaos at the office, and Angela's just, she's there. She's been helping with like office stuff, and it's chaos. So one of the people's like, Angela, there's all these reporters out there. Can you go talk to them? Just like, be the person who just goes and talks to them and say, we don't know anything or whatever. And she did such a good job. She was so level-headed and cool and like articulate with them that they were like, whoa, this person's really something.
Ourselves a new leader.
And they were really hungry to find A, young people, B, women, and C, East Germans who could be in politics, because they knew that they needed some demographic spread and they needed to get East Germans into democracy right away. So she was kind of plucked from that experience and ran for a seat in the legislature and won it. And then she became the Minister of Women and Youth in Germany, like because they needed to kind of like the way German politics. It's similar to Canada's actually, except they have a proportional system and we don't. Right. So because they have a proportional system, there's almost never one party in a majority of seats in the parliament. So there's always coalitions. It means one party will win the most seats, but they need to officially be like, we're forming a coalition with this party in order to make it work. So Angela Merkel, this party she's in, Democracy Awakening, gets absorbed into like the main right-wing party, which is kind of like the Conservative Party in Canada. They're sort of center-right, right?
Okay.
Because again, since Germany has a proportional system, it actually has little parties on the far right and little parties on the far left, right? As opposed to, and the center is similar to us, right? It's like there's a left party like the Liberals, and then there's a right party like the Conservatives. And then there's like a farther left party, and then there's the Greens, like that's all there also in Germany. Right. So she's in the big right party.
Sounds great. Listen to our electoral reform.
Yeah. Episode. Hey. Check out episode 3 on electoral reform if you want this to make sense to you. so she's, even though they're not in a majority, she gets to be a minister because they're in a coalition with who's the majority. So because they need someone young and fresh to be they want them to be the minister of women and youth. So Angela Merkel becomes the minister of women and youth, and she gets a reputation for being in private like really intense, really hard to criticize, and really doesn't put up with any bullshit. People call her like Angie the Snake, like behind her back.
Whoa.
And apparently like after another round of elections, there was like a shuffle and she became the Minister of the Environment. And apparently like the main bureaucrat in the Ministry of the Environment was like, you're probably going to need my help to run all of this. And she fired him for kind of suggesting that he needed her help.
Right.
So, she makes kind of a career out of blindsiding, patiently waiting for her moment, and then like striking and destroying like macho dudes who underestimate her politically.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Like,
hey?
Yeah. What a great like world icon.
Yeah.
But
you know what though? Here's my but.
Right.
It's not clear.
You can't see this, but Richard just stood up, pulled down his pants, and showed me his butt.
I like to call it my little Merkel. So it's not clear. It's not clear what she believes in or that she believes in anything. Many people, German journalists, other German politicians, granted sometimes German politicians that she's like crossed and fucked over and destroyed their careers,
right.
Seem to think that really she cares about power. She cares about being in power. She cares about being the one in charge, and she's not leading Germany towards anything in particular. She apparently has no long-term strategy. She has no grand vision. She has no big ideology or big ideas. They say like her view is like 2 weeks out. That's what she's kind of like looking at.
Right.
And maybe that's it's an exaggeration, but Germany in the West Germany, and now to some extent the reunified Germany, it has a really interesting relationship with that one time they did the Hitler thing, if you know what I mean.
I know.
So there's like a lot of, Angela Merkel, if you are a modern German citizen who's super afraid that you guys are going to do the Hitler thing part 2 someday, Angela Merkel dispels so many of your fears, right? Because like Germany has had a lot of macho dudes, and the first chancellor that who've run it, right? And the first chancellor that Merkel worked for, his name is Helmut Kohl. He was the chancellor from like
cool name.
Yeah, yeah. His name was Helmut Kohl. Electric guitar, lightning bolt.
Cool guy.
Yeah, sexy makeout. He was the chancellor from like 1980 until 1998. So for a long time. And he was kind of like a slick dude. And then the next chancellor, Gerhard Schroeder, was also kind of like a slick dude. And Germany has a weird relationship with slick dudes. You know what I mean? Like, and Germany has a very interesting sense of its own guilt and responsibility for World War II in a way that certainly Canada does not have for its own traumatic crimes in the past. Canada's Truth and Reconciliation is very, very early. It's in its very early stages with the crimes it's committed against the people who live here. But Germany's Truth and Reconciliation is a lot more mature in that I think most modern German citizens have a sense of responsibility for what they're inheriting and the legacy of genocide that they are inheriting.
This is anecdotal, but this is a story. A friend of mine told me he's Jewish, and he had a German roommate at university, and when they sort of met and got to know each other and stuff, they started talking, eventually talking about Jewish-German relations, and that's an interesting thing that's just in our house. And she said to him, she says, when I first found out you were Jewish, the first thing I thought to say to you was, I'm sorry, but I didn't, because I thought that would be a strange way to start a conversation.
Yeah.
And I've always found that really interesting. I'm just, you a citizen's understanding and ownership for crimes of their nation, despite them being nowhere near alive.
Right, but
it was happened.
They have a concept of inheriting the legacy.
Yeah.
They have a concept of inheriting both the like conditions in the society that created that danger and inheriting the legacy of trauma. That's the only way Germany can move forward, you know, is if a young German to a young Russian was like, yeah, I know it happened. Like, I feel like it's a danger. I get it. It's part of who I am that this happened. We don't have that in Canada yet. Right. Like, my anecdotal story is...
It's really evolved.
Yeah.
Would you say a superior race?
Yeah, let's not let our nuanced, empathetic understanding of Germans preclude us from making a lot of bad Nazi jokes.
Yeah.
So my anecdotal story is that like my mother and I were touring around Normandy in France, right? Which is where my grandfather landed on Juno Beach, so that I could be here today to make a podcast. For our international listeners, Juno Beach is like as the Canadian landing on D-Day, so it's like Omaha Beach or Utah Beach for Canada. The British ones were Gold and Sword, I believe.
Oh,
I think so.
There you go.
It's been a while. Anyway, we had a guide when we were there, and it was a young German woman who was like maybe a couple years older than me. I was 19 at the time, and we thought that was weird, but it was like she was doing like penance. You know, it was like she was like serving community service in a way. She was a young German woman. She would drive us around to the places Canadians had fought Germans, and she always referred to the German soldiers as Germans. She never called them Nazis, and I thought that was super interesting.
Yeah,
because you have that ability, like you could distance yourself, but
yeah.
she chose not to.
Very similarly, I've heard of there's a concentration camp in Germany. Yes, it's in Germany, and it is now like obviously it's they left it. It's a historical site now, and it is across the road from a police training academy. And the reason they built the police training academy there is to remind the police officers of what a totalitarian police state can do. Right. And so it's like, you look at it every day when you go to training.
Yeah. So for the country like that has this super active connection to the horrible atrocities of their past, Angela Merkel is a super appealing politician because she's a woman. She's like everybody's mom. She's kind of like not threatening, right? She's patient. She's a kind of nerd, right? She like loves data.
Right. Doesn't show her emotion.
Yeah. And like the German record on having a grand vision for society, not super great, right? Really shitty restaurants, and don't even get me started about the summer camps. Not fun, right? Like, So the fact that she isn't an ideological politician, I think, is really appealing to a lot of Germans. And she has huge popularity ratings in Germany, which I checked a poll from this week. She's still at like 75% popularity.
Whoa.
Huge popularity.
Big.
They like her a lot. She
Here's
also...
a question. Yeah. Because you say you don't... she doesn't seem to have any grand plan. Right. But we also have already covered the fact that she's very good at hiding what she's up to until she does it. Right. Is it possible that she does have a big grand plan, but she's just not letting anybody know?
I don't think so.
No.
I honestly don't think so. I mean, I suppose it is possible that she is, but what I have read about her, and again, let's put the caveat in. I'm a dude who did the Google. Yeah. I'm not a insider. I don't have special knowledge. What I've read about her seems to suggest that she's interested in just keeping the ship going as straight as possible. And in her case, the ship is Europe. Right. So that is a pretty big responsibility. She, I think, is really invested in keeping Europe strong because Germany is so much more powerful inside a united Europe than it is on its own. You know, people always say that like Germany, it gets kind of shackled to all the other countries in Europe, but it can kind of lead them, right? Germany gets boosted up in power to a world power because it has all these other European countries that it's economically tied to in the European Union. But if Germany didn't have those ties, it wouldn't be a huge world power. It's not big enough by itself. But Germany makes, the European Union makes Germany a huge world power. So she has a huge interest in keeping things stable and keeping things steady. She's kind of super boring. as a politician in a lot of ways. She doesn't do big, crazy things. But and apparently she obsessively tailors a lot of what she does to what the public opinion is, right? This is part of why people don't really... I'm not enthusiastic about her as a politician, and I think that I know that like there's a lot of like yes queen slay because she stood up to Trump or whatever, but like she's not deserving of your yes queen slay. You're wholeheartedly doing that, you know what I mean? Like she's a dangerous politician. She's a super neoliberal politician. She is deeply invested in keeping secure the neoliberal mechanisms of power, which have enriched the 1% of Western society at the expense of a lot of workers' rights, which are slowly eroding and getting worse all the time, right? The lower sections of society are always more and more vulnerable.
Right.
So she is definitely not reforming that system anytime soon. She does appear to care a lot about individual freedoms. Probably people think that's because as a result of growing up in the East, as we said, right? And one of the only major things that she's done where she broke with German public opinion was to allow 1 million refugees into Germany as a part of the global refugee crisis, which is by far the most of any country in Europe.
Right.
This was actually sort of a shocking thing for her. It was really out of character. There's a lot of, again, pop psychology kind of talk about like, well, she grew up in a society with a wall. Actually, she could see the Berlin Wall on her commute to her chemistry lab.
Right.
So it's not unreasonable to think that she would have a real disgust for any society that would put up a wall to keep people in poverty and in crisis, you know, and
sort of send her into vertigo world.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this was pretty shocking, and actually it caused her to take kind of a popularity hit for a while, although that stabilized. I
mean, when you're rolling 75%, you can afford to disappoint a few people.
Yeah, right.
You know
exactly.
what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. There's a German election this year, and she is standing for re-election again. They didn't know if she would or not, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. Germany has a far right. It's not as powerful as in France or in Holland. So in Holland and in France, people were really worried the far right was going to win, right? And in France, it still might happen. It's looking really crazy. It looks like Marine Le Pen, who's the far right-wing person in France, will probably make it to the last presidential ballot. Remember, the way the French presidential race works is you vote for everybody, and then it takes the top 2 people, and then you vote for them again. So somebody's going to win by majority, like more than 50%.
Right.
So it's pretty likely she'll be one of those 2 candidates. Now, it's less likely that she'll win, but I don't know if you recall our friend Donald Corndog Cornelius Trump.
Who?
It wasn't looking likely he would win either, and he won.
Yeah.
And it didn't look like the Brexit was going to happen, and that happened. So people are really suspicious of that. Now, the far right in Germany is way less popular than it is in other places, because of that one time that thing happened.
Right. Yeah. What thing?
Yeah. But she's facing a challenge now from her party, from the left party in Germany, who are kind of going for more of a workers' rights, labor-based platform, which is a risk for them. It's different than their normal party, because before, basically, they were all like Angela Merkel had this crazy effect on German politics where she was so beloved and she was so careful to tailor all her stuff to German popular opinion. And because even though she was in like a Christian democratic right party, it's like literally an ideologically Christian party, but she herself is not that, and everyone kind of knew it.
Right.
Like she kind of stifled all of the opposition just because they had nothing to go on, right? Like she was so popular, you couldn't oppose her on anything, and she was so bland, kind of too, and safe. You couldn't like hit her with anything to smear her, because she was sort of like the reason she's called mommy. It was originally attempted to be used as like an insult against her by her opposition, but she kind of owned it. She sort of picked it up and
she 8-miled it.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Right.
She was like
she took it and became it.
Her arms are ready. Knees weak, arms spaghetti. There's vomit on her mismatched dress already. Mom's a schnitzel.
You went like so Chinese until you said schnitzel.
Oh shit. What can I say? I'm still Richard from the block.
That's right,
in the
baby.
small village outside Guangzhou.
Yeah, Richard Big L Lamb.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So
So she owned mommy. Now she mommy.
yeah. So now she's mommy.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see what happens and if she gets in again. I feel like she probably will. But again,
75%.
but that's her popularity. Her party's not polling as well. And actually, her party just lost their state, like their provincial election, which was unexpected. And the far right did better there than they thought it would. Although that's where the far right does better in Germany than geographically than in other places. So we'll see what happens.
So we've heard about Angela Merkel. Angela being the German way to pronounce Angela. Just to clarify that in case we accidentally say Angela during this thing.
Yeah, and Merkel being very similar to the word for pubic wig.
Yeah. Suspiciously similar.
Wait.
Wait.
We're through the looking glass here, people.
That's like a medieval form of contraception, isn't it? Pointy pubic wigs.
Yeah, I think so. That and fire.
Yes. Yeah, you won't have sex, daughter, not while under my roof. And to make it so, I'll make you a pubic wig made of brambles.
Yes. That'll keep the Pope out, if you know what I mean.
Okay, so we've seen where she came from, where she is now, and all, what she's in charge of, and what she's moving into. She's moving into election.
Yeah.
I got a text from Richard a couple days ago. I asked him how his research was going, and his text said, in order to understand Angela Merkel, I had to do some research into how money works, and now I feel like I have walked in on my parents having sex.
Yeah.
Which I thought,
okay, we're getting into this now.
Here we go.
Okay, so basically the reason I sent you that text is because there's three major landmarks in Angela Merkel's career.
Okay.
We talked about one, the refugee crisis. The other is her relations with Russia. She serves Germany is a really insanely important piece in the relationships between the West and Russia. Literally, right? It was literally divided in half, right? So they are not quite the West and not quite the East in a lot of ways.
Right.
And she plays that part. Like, she calls Putin, they talk on the phone every week, which is a lot more than most world leaders.
That's more than Putin's family talks to you.
Yeah. Oh man. Also, I gotta say, there was a fucking awesome Vladimir Putin Angela Merkel story. There's actually two that I'll tell. One is that he went to visit her. She went to visit him on one of their first meetings as like heads of state, and apparently she's terrified of dogs because as like a young person, she was like bitten by a dog once, so she's really scared of dogs. And he like, when they were hanging out and like there's all these journalists, he like called his huge dog in, and she was like really like freaked out by it, and he was like like kind of like the elephant head thing that he did to Hillary Clinton.
Right.
Although apparently then afterwards she was like, he has to do that because his country is weak and he is an insecure man. So
so Putin put his own dog to death.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Putin judo chopped it until it exploded into like nothingness.
Yeah.
The other funny story was that she was in Sochi visiting when Dmitry Medvedev was the president of Russia during that brief period of time.
Yeah.
And she's walking with Medvedev in Sochi, and there's like the Baltic Sea there, and she was like, I've heard that Vladimir Putin, when he's in this part of Russia, swims 1,000 meters in the Baltic Sea every day. Do you do anything like that? And Medvedev was like, I swim 1,500 meters. But like these are like the fucking macho ass dudes she's just like kind of like reeling along all the time, right?
It's weird to think about people that run things as big as countries being that socially.
They're just idiots, right? Just like you're just like, oh, it's like my shitty boss I had at the fucking car wash when I was in high school, except it's the fucking president of Russia.
Yeah, well, my dick is too big for anybody.
Yeah. I got the biggest dick anyone's ever seen. It's like the size of a jumbo jet.
Yeah, sure thing, boss.
Yeah.
Make sure that economy keeps going.
So she plays a really important part in mediating things with Russia, especially since she also kind of runs Europe, right? And Russia's been invading the Ukraine, and these are EU members, the Ukraine, and intervening in the election in Moldova and stuff. So like when Russia invaded the Ukraine, Germany was really like, she had to work really hard to put sanctions on them because there's so many economic ties between Germany and Russia. But she figured out how to do it. She like put sanctions on Russia, and she canceled, and she started not taking his weekly phone call, and apparently that really shook him up.
For sure.
Because like he relies on that to talk. He basically finds out about what America and Britain and France are all thinking through his phone call with Angela Merkel. They kind of touch base every week. So he was like, he apparently after he invaded the Ukraine, when Angela Merkel wouldn't take his phone call, he realized maybe he had stepped too far. This is all anecdotal evidence, but like, so that's an example of how important she is.
Right. And sanctions, that's like pressure points, right? Like
it's like
you're putting restrictions.
It's like we're not going to send you our this and that and our oil or whatever.
Right.
Obviously, Germany imports oil from Russia because Russia's an oil producing country, but like, it's like you want to squeeze them economically, which Germany has the power to do, but it squeezes Germany too. But she wanted to do it to keep Russia kind of in line, right?
Right. Well, that's kind. I like the idea of like Vladimir Putin like sitting next to his phone.
Yeah.
It's Sunday at 10 a.m. and Angela is not called yet.
Yeah. Well, here's interesting too. Apparently, like, and this gives you an idea. You know, Angela Merkel's a 3-time German national Russian speaker, champion Russian speaker.
Yeah.
But apparently, Vladimir Putin speaks much better German than she speaks Russian, which gives you a good example of how good his German is. Apparently, his German's like insanely good.
Yeah, actually, I heard that.
Yeah, we said that on the podcast.
That's crazy. Because I mean, I was hanging out with some Ukrainians one time. I was on a weird warehouse job I was doing.
This makes it sound like you were a mercenary.
Yeah,
you were a hitman. Were you a hitman?
Some of these people might have been mercenaries.
Like this sounds like what you would say if you were a hitman trying to not say you were a hitman. I was hanging out with some Russians
and North Koreans.
Yeah.
And,
were you in Benghazi?
No, we were working in a warehouse over Christmas one time, and I sort of said, I'm like, like they were speaking Ukrainian to each other. They asked if I spoke Ukrainian. I said no, but I don't mind. Go ahead, just speak Ukrainian. And I was like, do any of you speak Russian? Because I once knew a Polish girl who also spoke Russian, and they're geographically close. And one of the guys was like, no, I don't speak Russian at all. And I'm like, oh, that's is it close? Is it a close language? Because to my English ear, that I don't know any of those Eastern European languages, it sounds the same. I can't tell the difference from audibly, And he said the difference between Russian and Ukrainian is like the difference between English and Chinese. He's like, it's so different. It's like structurally just not the same. And I found that amazing, considering it was, to me, I couldn't tell you the difference based on hearing it.
And then he was like, now shut up and help me finish killing the crocodile hunter.
Yeah. I mean, no, that's not what happened. We were lifting boxes.
You guys were in stingray outfits.
Is it hot in here? No, we were lifting boxes. It was Christmas time. It was a beautiful...
Take the shot. He's
admitted to it. Take the shot. It was a beautiful December day.
Just kidding, Jamie. It was a bit. Jamie? No, Jamie!
Inception. I got you.
Oh, you crazy kooky guy.
Yeah.
You trickster, you.
I was never a mercenary, guys. I'm just poor, especially at Christmas time. So I move boxes for less money than I should have. Okay, so she's
a super important link with Russia.
She speaks good Russian.
Yeah.
Vladimir Putin speaks good German.
And she's a super important link with Russia. So that's a big part of what she does. And then the other big thing is the European debt crisis, right?
Yes.
So as the leader of the EU, Angela Merkel, essentially, the de facto leader of the EU, she was in charge of kind of quarterbacking the debt crisis.
Right. Did she say, no, Europe, you cannot get your quarterback?
Like, on one hand, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard you say in my life. But on the other hand, she did kind of say that. Like, she actually did kind of say that. So I don't know what to do now. Everything's a lie.
There you go.
No. Okay. So I won't, again, this is one of those topics like ISIS where this is a lot. And we will hit the end of my knowledge if we go too far in any one direction. So I just tried to learn enough about it so that I could kind of explain it to you. So the European Union is like 27 countries in a big economic agreement, and they have a lot of shared regulations and stuff like that. Then they also have one currency, the Eurozone, right? They have the euro. The thought behind the euro, it's all pretty, the European Union is super, super boring and dry, and that's part of why people don't like it.
Right.
It's like not that inspiring. It's like all economic, right? It has no political mechanism, which is part of what's...
The European Union is a confederation, right? Or is it a federation?
It's not a federation. Federation is it's not a federation at all, right? It has no political element, right? Even though there is a European Parliament, it doesn't have political power. It can't raise taxes, right? The countries in Europe aren't paying taxes to the overall EU. That's what the difference is.
It's just an economic agreement.
Exactly. It's like a really, 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 really good free trade agreement.
Okay.
Except a level above even that, right?
Right.
Because they share a currency now. Actually, federation is one of the future things that people think the EU could go to. You would unite them essentially under one super country, all the countries in the EU. That's definitely on the table. Like
what would
on
you call it? Europe.
Yeah, you answered your own question there. I don't know. Why don't we call it Stan?
Europe Stan?
No, I actually just meant like the man's name, Stan. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, an Eminem song. Bringing it home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll just call it the real Slim Shady of the country.
That'd be pretty cool. Imagine how surprised Eminem would be.
Yeah, what would he do with that, do you think? He'd just be like,
oh,
yo, weird. And
yeah.
Hey, Europe. I'm going to go make another song about how I beat my wife when I was 18, but now I'm a millionaire. I don't really have problems.
That's crazy because you and I were on the exact same joke train, and you were there just a split second before I was.
Like a Kenyan sprinter. Motherfucker! No, okay, so basically one of the things that people are required to do, countries are required to do when they enter the EU is they have to agree to spend within a certain limit. So they're not allowed to have a deficit bigger than like 60% of their GDP, right? They're not allowed to spend more than 60% more than what they make.
Okay.
Or, and it was revealed when the EU kind of coalesced, a lot of the countries had not been doing that and were not set up that well, and a lot of their economies were in really bad shape. The worst one is Greece. You've probably heard of this. Greece has like horrible economy. I'm not an international political economist, and I don't know that much about Greece's economy, to be perfectly honest. Right. I just know the bullet point version of why that is. It's partly because apparently in Greece, if you're super rich, it's really easy to get out of paying your taxes. So Greece just wasn't taking in that much money, and it has a pretty broad welfare state, like a social safety net for people, which was protecting a lot of people in Greece because there's a lot of poor people there too. Because of that, it was spending a lot more than it was making. And because Greece was about to go into a serious financial crisis, Greece was tied to the euro now, and it was going to destabilize the whole euro. Now, pause. I was like, wait, how does this work? What is it? I know what it means when a currency is worth less. You know what I mean? I know what exchange rates are. I get that. But I was like, but do I actually know why money has value? And I realized I didn't. So I went to the well.
Right. Can I take a swing?
Yeah.
Because I feel like I know, but I'm willing to lay it on the line.
Get in there.
So, when a country needs more money,
yes,
they make more money.
Correct.
And that devalues your currency.
Right.
End of explanation.
Great. The actual answer is when a country wants more money, it has to find another country that it loves very much.
Yeah.
And then they get together. They insert themselves into one country, puts its penis in the other country's vagina. Okay. And then 9 months later,
they're stuck with
there's a new central bank. Yeah, that's right. No, you actually are kind of correct. In the past, when countries have had serious
for that liability joke.
In the past, when countries have had serious debt problems, they usually just print more money and use that to pay for the debt, which causes inflation, which can get really bad. Like in the classic example is post-war Germany, right? After World War I in Germany had to pay huge financial reparations to the Allied powers, right? And it had no resources. It was fucked up. It was like all of its stuff had been taken from it. So the only way it had to pay those debts was to print more money and give it to them. But there was so much money that it became worthless. I think there was a point where one British pound was worth 4 billion German marks in the 1920s. Like, that's how bad the inflation got.
Wow.
Right. Now that's an extreme case, but normally Greece would just be like, okay, we're printing more money. The cost of our drachma or whatever is going to go down, but then we'll build it back up by, you can also fix it. You can do all kinds of shit to make it worth more.
Yeah.
But because they're in the euro, they can't just print more money. Once you're in the eurozone, you can't just make more euros, right? They won't let you do that.
Right.
That's one of the terms of the eurozone. So because of that,
because they're not a federation.
Right, exactly. Greece was like pulling everybody else down. Now, okay, we were on the money thing. So we have to go all the way back in the day before there was money, when you wanted stuff.
That wasn't a real time.
That's right. When the dinosaurs ruled the earth and the dinosaur wanted a candy bar.
Yeah, even the Flintstones had to work. Fred worked at the stone place.
Yeah, and that was just security camera footage of what that time actually looked like. So you got to trust it.
I know.
So back in the day, there was what was called, the barter system, right? So it's like, I have a cow, you have a bushel of grain, you need a cow, I need a bushel of grain. We just trade them, right? And now, but then you get in the situation where it's like, what if you have a bushel of grain and I have a good bushel of grain? We both want a cow. Neither of us has neither of us has a cow. How do we get a cow? Right? It's like confusing.
Right.
And the reason money was invented was to basically solve all the problems you can think of arising from that system.
Yeah.
Of where, like, because resources were kind of finitely concentrated in different places. So if you can convert your resource into like a neutral thing that everyone agreed had value of some kind, then you could exchange that neutral thing for whatever you needed whenever you needed it, and everyone just agreed that this stuff had value, right? Even all the way back then, money only had value because everyone gave it value. Right? That's where money gets its value. We just say it has value. Right.
Even now, it's like I forget what the movie is, but there's some like post-apocalyptic movie in which the main character is like walking through the street, and there's a bank that's been, smashed open or something like that, and there's millions of dollars like blowing in the wind around him, and nobody cares.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh yeah, because
it's not worth anything.
It's not worth anything anymore.
Well, and this is what's interesting. Paper money. Through the 19th century and into the 20th century, paper money was a certificate that entitled you to redeem it for gold.
Right.
It was backed by gold, right? Most of the currencies in the world were all backed by gold into the 20th century, which meant that you could take your whatever dollar bill, go to like the central bank and be like, I'd like to trade this for gold, please. And they would have to give it to you. And at that time, like, part of what valued the currency was the value of gold, and B, if the country could do that, right? So if like the word got out that the U.S. actually only had enough gold to pay for half of all the money in circulation, suddenly that money was worth half as much. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because like if you go there and you show up and you're like, I want to redeem this for gold, they're like, ooh, we only have enough to give you half. So it's worth half of what it says, right? Like that's
like in It's a Wonderful Life.
Yes. That's right.
Right.
An angel just got his wings somewhere when you said that. But in 1971, all the currencies stopped being backed by gold.
Huh.
And so now
it's backed by frankincense and myrrh.
There's that Catholic school background coming out swinging. No, get this. Now money only has value because it has value.
Because we agree.
Because we agree it has value. Or as was better explained in another article I read, on the last day that money was backed by gold, it was backed by gold. The next day, when it was no longer backed by gold, you pegged the value at whatever it could buy for you the day before. And then the next day you pegged it at whatever you could buy the day before that. And so it's like basically what gives a currency its value today is whatever you could do with it yesterday. You know what I mean? So it's all been just a slow evolution, starting at the point where it was still backed by gold, away into wherever it is today. But if tomorrow everyone was like, you know what? I won't accept US dollars anymore, they wouldn't. There's no reason that they would be worth anything.
Okay, here's a question.
Yeah?
Because sometimes I go into convenience stores and they don't take $50 bills.
Right.
And I always think in that moment, I'm like, then this isn't worth $50.
Right.
Because I can't use it here. I have a limited use bill in my pocket that is worth $50 in some places, but in this place I'm in currently, it is worth nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's such a headache. Oh, here's another mind fuck.
Yeah.
One of the ways that governments create wealth is by creating money, because like it only costs 2 cents or 3 cents to make a quarter, but when the quarter's made, the quarter's worth 25 cents.
Right.
Like, where did the value come from? We just agree that it has the value.
Yeah. Well, it's got that caribou on it.
Yeah.
Or reindeer.
Yeah, it's
not a
caribou.
reindeer, caribou.
Yeah. Anyway, okay. All this to say, I
And
just
the
felt like
Queen,
that was an
lest we
interesting
forget.
thing to show that the reason the euro goes down is because the countries attached to it, if they're doing worse, it's like perceived that currency is worth less because it's used by countries that are less financially capable, that are less stable, whatever. That's all in play. All of that shit has to do with currencies, and it's just when people start to lose confidence in whatever the zone that the currency is used in, that's when the currency goes down. I mean, there's like I'm sure an economist somewhere is screaming at me right now. So please, if you know more about this and you want us to say more things, hit us up and we'll hit this in another Double Dip episode more about the economy. I'm certainly interested in learning more about it.
Yeah.
But anyway, there was a point in 2011, 2012 where like Greece was failing, Spain was failing, Ireland was failing, Portugal was failing. So all of these economies in the Eurozone were starting to really tank. And
enter Germany.
Yeah, well, basically, there were all of these ideas people had about how to solve this problem, but Angela Merkel forced everybody to accept austerity. Those were the terms.
Austerity being?
So austerity is the opposite of stimulus.
Okay.
So if you're in a financial crisis, your economy's not doing well,
you start a war.
Honestly, that's actually stimulus.
Yeah.
That's the other one.
Right.
There's 2 things you can do. One is stimulus. So stimulus spending, the most famous stimulus program of all time is the New Deal in America. So in the 30s, after the Great Depression, the government was like, we're going to spend ourselves into deficit. We're going to spend more money than we have. We're going to borrow it and get it from wherever. And we're going to make a bunch of projects and we're going to put a bunch of money into the economy that we borrow in order to jumpstart it so that the economy can start floating again, and then we can slowly pay it all back. That's stimulus. Austerity is the opposite. It's like we're going to cut everything. We're going to get our budget down to a deficit down to a manageable level, and then we'll kind of build up from there.
Right.
Austerity worked for Germany. Germany's economy after unification was really unstable because it was like a big change.
Yeah.
And their austerity came into play under Merkel. Oh no, under Gerhard Schroeder. Sorry, the chancellor before Merkel. They brought in austerity. They cut government spending. They cut some welfare programs, and it worked for Germany. Now again, Germany is an economy with it's a big prosperous economy with a lot of people, right? So austerity worked there.
Right.
But like Greece, the most affected country, they elected this really cool kind of communist government called Syriza. They're not in power anymore, and their finance minister, who I talked about last time, Yanis Varoufakis. I said he was the finance minister of Greece. He's the ex-finance minister of Greece. Okay. Basically went to the European Union and proposed all of these ways that the European Union could help them out of the debt crisis that involved using the institutions of the EU differently. It was kind of like we were talking about with the UBI, how like there's these ways that you could capture money differently other than just taxing people.
Right.
To pay for everything, right? They didn't want countries...
UBI, go check out our Universal Basic Income episode.
Yeah, thank you. They didn't want other countries in Europe to just give them money to get them out of it, right? Everyone knew that was a bad cycle. Okay. Although, debt, that is part of it. They do want, there's an element of redistribution involved to keep everyone afloat, but he had all these clever ways to do it and like kind of new mechanisms to bring in and stuff like that. They wouldn't listen to any of it. They totally shut him down. And Angela Merkel was basically like, we have to cut your government spending. Right. And so they had to like gut everyone's pensions in Greece. They had to get rid of tons of social assistance and welfare, which really disproportionately affected vulnerable people, poor people. So like, poor people in Greece feel Angela Merkel fucked them over. Right. Which it's not unfair to say that she did. Right. Now, I'm sure from her perspective, she's trying to do what's right for the Eurozone and for the stability of Europe. But keep in mind, again, she's a neoliberal. She is invested in the status quo of the system. She's not a grand visionary of the EU, right? She's not trying to advance it further towards unification. She's just trying to keep everything going in the moment and go in line with what popular opinion was. In Germans, I mean, this week, the German finance minister said that the Greeks spent all their money on women and booze. So that's the German opinion of the Greeks. So Angela Merkel, by going hard on the Greeks, was in line with German public opinion, which is what she tends to do. Right? Like, and she put a lot of people in extremely dire circumstances because of that. Right? So that's part of why people are not. That's why I'm like, don't be like Yas Queen Slay to Angela Merkel. She is not a defender of the weak and vulnerable. She has done incredible things stacked against incredible odds, and she is a remarkable person, a brilliant person by all accounts,
but
a brilliant
she's
politician.
Not here to save us.
No, she's not going to save anybody. She's a manager, and her own ambition and power seem to be her guiding ideology. Keeping power. Certainly I like her more than Donald Trump. Don't get me wrong, but when I hear about how she's got a challenger on the left in Germany, and that challenger is talking more about rectifying this economic situation we find ourselves in and going back and listening to the people who they're supposed to be leading and creating a program that serves them, I think, okay, this is the kind of person who maybe should be running things. Because that's austerity, right? When austerity it comes in, economic times get really bad for vulnerable people, and that creates extremism, right? So the far right is rising in countries that have had austerity happen to them in a lot of ways because people are poor, and it's easy then for people to start blaming refugees. Is the big one in Europe, right? Because the refugees are a really visible change that's only happened in the last few years, right? So in a lot of countries that have had bad austerity, like there's horrible racism and xenophobia.
The French Revolution. Isn't that what that was?
Well, it was a combination of famine and overspending. I mean, they never had a modern government. They were a monarchy, right? So, I mean, it's a similar thing. But, like, there is a danger to... I think in our world today, there is a danger to the neoliberal status quo. We're driving at a cliff, and we need to turn to the left, specifically, in order to avoid it. And Angela... though I have a great admiration for the things she has achieved and the obstacles she's overcome, and actually she sounds like a super interesting person. I think that if she keeps the straight course that she's keeping, is putting Europe in danger. I actually do think that. I think she seems capable of making those calculations, but we'll see. So far in the refugee crisis, she pleasantly, to my pleasant surprise, went against public opinion. But we'll see how things continue to unfold, especially because this is an election year for her. Now, Germans hate Donald Trump, so, you know, this could be big for her. And her personal opinion level is still really high. Her opinion levels of her are really high, so, you know, she could be in good shape.
What could we stop and talk for a second about her and Donald Trump's meeting the other day?
Sure.
What was it about?
I mean, I think it was just like standard diplomatic introductory meeting.
Hey, how's it going?
I mean, okay, here's another...
Welcome to the club.
This is something I want to talk about. There was so much content created around her asking Donald Trump for a handshake and him not giving it. But it was like a 6-second chunk. Maybe he didn't hear her. There's nothing to indicate he did it on purpose. Like, it's just like we're obsessed with content in our modern day. Like, there's all this political content where it's like, check out this, if John Oliver eviscerates this guy on this thing, you know, like there's all sorts of stuff like that. But that's not politics. Content and politics are two different things. And it's way more important to pay attention to the politics. Like, that's how you can get into thinking like, oh yeah, Angela Merkel shut down Trump. She's totally a like ally. Yeah, she's awesome. It's like, no, she fucked over a lot of people. And you should care more about that than about this 6-second clip of her not shaking Donald Trump's hand.
Not getting to shake Donald Trump's hand.
So I think, I mean, we saw it again too. Remember when Justin Trudeau went and met Trump, and Trump went for a handshake, and there's a picture of Donald Trump extending his hand for a handshake, and Justin Trudeau's just like looking at it like, come on, buddy. And everyone was like, look at Justin Trudeau shutting Donald Trump down. But then in the video, 1 second later, he just hesitated for a second, and then 1 second later, he shook his hand. Right? Like, it's nothing. It's content. It's like a BuzzFeed clickbait thing. But that's not what politics actually is. And
Right.
Angela would never be fooled by that, so we shouldn't be fooled either.
Yeah,
Crafty lady that she is.
and certainly there was that. Yeah, I'm guilty of buying into that moment, perhaps too much. But also, the press conference they had
Right.
after, which did not go well for Donald Trump.
No, but it's easy. It's super predictable that she would be like, go refugees, because she's super invested in that policy position herself. And B, like I said, the German opinion is really against Donald Trump. So sniping at Donald Trump in an election year, like, does she care what the American public thinks of her? No, she doesn't give a shit. But it's an easy way for her to score points with her people in an election year, which is also what Justin Trudeau was doing, by the way. Like all these Canadians think that Justin Trudeau is like refugee friendly because he tweeted about it, but actually he hasn't like moved at all to sign the legislation that would allow refugees to come safely to Canada from the U.S.
Huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway,
Great.
so I think we're at that time. What do you want to sum up what you've
Yeah,
learned about
wow, okay.
Angie?
Okay,
Angie?
mommy, Angie Merkel. She was born in 1954-ish in separated Germany, in East Germany.
Born in the West, moved to the East as like a tiny
because
baby.
her father was a Western Lutheran. I was going to say Lithuanian.
Lutheran's like the main Protestant
Yeah.
church in Germany, right? It's
Right,
like the
right.
Anglican church in Germany.
So he moved to the East. Their family was under suspicion because of that, because they were religious. So
Pause. I don't mean it's like a branch of the Anglican church in Germany. I mean it's like culturally as important, culturally equivalent. I just know that somebody's going to say like it's not the Anglican church in Germany. No, I know who Martin Luther is.
Yeah.
I listened to his speech in Washington, D.C. No, I'm kidding. I know who the first Martin Luther was. Jesus Christ.
So they were under suspicion because he was religious, or her mom, who was an English teacher, couldn't get work. Angela, a frumpy, clumsy young lady, got good at keeping shit down because of all the secret police and stuff like that. And so as she grew older, she took an interest. She learned Russian, not just learned Russian, but learned to speak Russian very, very well. She got degrees in physics and chemistry, where those two intersect. Is a real data numbers cruncher type lady. When the wall fell, she had a beer,
Bitch.
and she joined a party called Democracy Awakening, in which Democracy Awakening, to which it turns out that one of the leaders of the party was a Stasi informant, and so that like threw everything into flux. And Angela Merkel, in a beautiful, divinely inspired moment of PR, went out and spoke to the reporters in such a way that it inspired other people in her party to slide her name to the top of the pile and put her in league for a seat in the equivalent House of Commons. What was it?
The Bundesrat.
Bundesrat.
No. Bundestag. The Bundesrat is the Senate. The Bundestag.
Yeah. Bundestag, which she got. And thus Angela Merkel was born, a politician. and yeah, she fought her way all the way to chancellorship. Mm-hmm. She is the closest to Vladimir Putin of all world leaders, and partly because she speaks such eloquent Russian, and also partly because of German and Russian economic ties. Mm-hmm. So, in fact, she has shown her hand at being actually able to, now I don't want to say control Putin, but affect Putin.
Yeah, he takes her seriously.
He takes her very seriously. So she is a kind of a glorious feminist icon, I'd say. But she's not all sunshine and rainbows, because she's also not really, I don't want to say she's not a visionary, but she's not really a visionary. She's just keeping the boat
She's totally not a visionary.
floating. You know, she's managing it very well, but is moving forward basing most of her decisions off public opinion. She has a 75% approval rating in her country. She's up for a re-election this year. With regard to the economic crisis in Europe, she was the the champion of cuts, the opposite of stimulus, which is austerity. So budget cuts, stop spending, which is why a lot of Greek poor people don't like her, is because she feels like she is directly picking on them, which in a lot of ways she is.
She is responsible.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have done that if she didn't make them.
Right.
Nobody in Greece wanted that.
Right. And yeah, is there anything else I'm missing?
Oh, that was pretty good.
I know a lot more about her than I did before.
There's a couple great anecdotes I just don't want to get lost, so we'll close maybe with them. It's an interesting thing. Obviously, Hitler dominates everyone's perceptions of Germany, and it's so interesting to think of her as like the opposite of Hitler in every way. Like this woman, frumpy woman, not a great eloquent speaker, but like she's not an inspiring, fiery speaker. She has no grand vision for Germany's place in the world. And actually, most German public opinion wants to keep Germany out of a lot of world affairs, right? They didn't do the war in Iraq. They didn't go to Afghanistan. They don't want to project their power, right? So she's kept them out of all that. There's just this great anecdote I didn't want to lose, where apparently, like one time, her and her staff were on a trip or something, and they were in a hotel room, and she was telling us a funny story about when she was at East German summer camp, and they're all laughing, her staff members are all laughing, and then she stops and she's like, "Why are you laughing? I've told all of you this story before. You're just laughing because you think that like don't be yes men." It's like kind of like she called them all out, which is like the opposite of what you would think so many world leaders would do, right? All those people in power, people kiss their ass and stuff. So she, specifically tried to
trick them.
Yeah, well, not trick. Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's duplicitous.
Yeah.
If you start telling a story to a whole group of people that you already know, you've told to everybody,
just to see if anyone was going to say, "Hey, Angela, you told us this story already."
Yeah. That's a bit of that's
a bit,
really rude.
Well, that's what I mean, though. That's what I mean, where it's like she's kind of like she's a poker player. Right. Like she's a danger. I mean, like politically, she's considered incredibly ruthless and dangerous by people in Germany, and by people in Germany who were kind of in the know. And she ruined a lot of people's careers. Right. Granted, a lot of them were men who didn't take her seriously enough, and who weren't necessarily better people themselves, but like she's done it. She swore she would get revenge on the Chancellor Gerhard Schroeder, because he said she had done a pathetic job as the Minister of the Environment when he took power after her government kind of got elected out when she was the minister. And she it was one of the only times she ever said how she felt in public, and she's like, one day I will make him pay for this. And he's the one she beat in the election to become Chancellor. It took her 9 years.
Whoa.
9 years later, she came for him.
Whoa.
Yeah. So I would say we should all be respectfully wary of Angela Merkel, because it's not predictable what she's going to do, because she doesn't have an ideology, and she is a woman of incredible political means.
Right. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's kind of cool, though, right?
It's cool. It's cool. It's nice to hear about other power players in the world other than Donald Trump, Justin Trudeau, and Vladimir Putin.
Yeah.
I feel like that's all I fucking hear about all day, every day.
Angela, I bet I'm going to be really curious to see how this election plays out in Germany. It's in September, so we'll revisit
tuned.
it. Maybe a week or two out, we'll do an episode and we'll just chat about
German election.
What's going on in the German election. Maybe as a bonus, or maybe as a
who knows?
As a full episode. Who knows how we'll be feeling?
Yeah.
Maybe we'll all be
feeling
dead.
Good.
We'll all be dead. Jamie and I went very different directions on that.
Yeah. We're feeling good. Maybe we'll be dead.
We'll all be dead.
Guys, this has been another lovely episode of Explain It to Jamie. Please, if you like it. Subscribe.
Tell your friends.
Leave us
a review on iTunes.
Yeah, those help. Tweet about us at Explain Jamie. Facebook, Explain It to Jamie. You can get at us through Facebook or by email, which is Explain it to Jamie at gmail.com. Yeah, that was better. Than the thing that we just edited out, but you can't hear
You'll never
because it's
know what
edited
it
out.
was.
Yeah.
It was horrible.
Richard accidentally said the N-word when I prompted him to say the email address.
Nuggets. The worst word.
The worst word. Share, like, subscribe,
yeah.
tell your friends, stay active,
Also,
stay vigilant.
If you hear anything on these podcasts that you would like us, that we got wrong, or that you want to add to, or there's something you want covered, you have questions, hit us up. We will cover it on a future Double Dip or in a future episode. An example is, some people were asking us to talk about cryptocurrency UBIs, which we're going to take a look at in the future.
We sure are. I'm very excited for that.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm Jamie.
I'm Richard.
This is Explain It to Jamie. Merkel, 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 Merkel,
Angela, motherfucker.